Sometimes it's not the loudest stories that keep us up at night. It's the quiet ones, the ones that never quite made the headlines, the ones that left behind more questions than answers. The Final Trace is a true crime podcast about the strange, the unresolved, and the stories that slip through the cracks. From disappearances to mysterious deaths, to cases that were technically solved, but still don't sit right. We dig into the overlooked, the eerie, and the human side of every story. Because even when a case goes cold, there's always something left behind. A clue, a feeling, a final trace. Follow The Final Trace wherever you listen to podcasts, and come find what still lingers in the silence. I'm your host, Hopper Daly, and this is The Final Trace.
Hello, witches and magical souls. Welcome back to another episode of the Bell Witch podcast with me, Swales, the Friendly Green Witch. This is the long-awaited part 2 of exploring the mystical sites of southwest Britain, and it is going to be covering the Museum of Witchcraft and Magic and the absolutely gorgeous Chalice well. I apologise there was a break between them because I had promised Laura May that her episode would be out in early September, and early September was now, so I was a bit like, oh, I should do it now. So that was not intended. I'm back on track now, and I am currently doing one episode a week. I just don't know how podcasters do this. It is really hard. I find myself podcasting all the time in the evenings and just not having any spare time to be with my family or do anything else. So I have tried this before just to confirm I cannot podcast once a week. Not right now anyway. Maybe in the future. That is a goal of mine. I think I need to be more organised because I can't shake this sense of just winging it and just pulling it out my butt cheeks and see how it goes. Perhaps I need to actually put pen to paper and write down a plan, but in all honesty, I don't believe that'll make any difference. It's just how I roll, witches. It's just how I roll. As I edit now, I am currently 39, and when this podcast episode comes out on Spotify on the Monday, I'll be 40, which is older than my mum, which is weird and sad and all kinds of emotions. But yeah, I turn 40 on the 20th of September. It is a big deal for me personally. So I probably will have almost died yesterday on the 21st of September, which happens to be Mabon, because I'll probably be really hungover because my pie is going to start at 3 and go on until everybody hits the deck. I am just overjoyed that I'm still alive and I'm well and I'm happy mentally. And also the book will have been drawn, and congratulations to the future winner, whoever wins. I haven't drawn it yet. So this is past me talking to the present me, like we did that on the last episode with Laura, which I quite liked. And she had manifested everything we dreamt about on the podcast episode, which is wild and magical and bloody amazing. Can you believe that I've almost had 100 uploads on the feed? I think this is 96 or 97. And I was reflecting the other day on just what kind of host I am. And I realised the way I talk to you is quite personal, and I inform you about bits of my life from a witchy slant. I hope that's okay. I listen to many podcasts, and personally I really enjoy finding out who they are and celebrating their little wins and stuff. I just hope that you feel that way too, and I'm not just babbling stuff you're not very interested in. But from the bottom of my witchy heart, I just want to say thank you for continually coming to the Bell Witch podcast and listening every 2 weeks whenever it comes out. I really do appreciate every single listener. And thank goodness I've finally discovered magic and witchcraft. It has enabled me to live a truly wonderful magical lifestyle. I raise a glass to magic and witchcraft and many more episodes to come. Cheers. The Museum of Witchcraft and Magic. Here, magic is not fantasy. It's folklore, it's history, and it's evidence of lived experiences of cunning folk, witches and magicians of higher magic. The cabinets are filled with ancient curios, spells, forgotten artifacts, sculpture and more. Things found up chimneys and buried in graveyards, gifted down the family, discovered through mysterious circumstances, or found in the drawer and sent in the post. It really is the Aladdin's cave of the occult. There's a black mirror used for scrying, a soldier's charm stitched in the trenches, a wand carved by moonlight. This was an amazing experience for me. I've known of this little museum for pretty much since I met Louise and did her course on witchcraft, because she spoke about it often, about visiting and what they had in there. It just seemed so far away when I first heard about it, and I honestly didn't think I'd ever make it there. But when we started to develop a coastal route in Cornwall for the big pre-40 holiday, well, the Museum of Witchcraft and Magic had to be on there, and oh my days, it did not disappoint. My dear witch, it was absolutely astonishingly brilliant, super duper magical, marvellous, yes. A sweet little corner of witchy heaven tucked away from the main street. And I wouldn't be surprised if many people didn't even notice it there, because I know there'll be many that come to this little town just for this museum, but it doesn't overshadow, it doesn't overstep or take over. It fits in absolutely beautifully and suits its surroundings. And I do feel a sense of love and respect for it, like the people there treasure it. That's the vibe I got. As a witch, that is a wonderful breath of fresh air when going to touristy places. It's very unsuspecting. You wouldn't know it was even there. I believe it's meant to be found by those who are looking for it. Even if they don't know it's there, if it's meant for them, then the museum will be found. The museum's building is quite beautiful as well on the outside. A black and white trad building with the new logo, the MWM, and a wishing well and a little mini garden and a few sculptures and some beautiful signs. It even had a place to park your broomstick. It really was gorgeous just to look at on the outside, and I just couldn't wait to get in there. But as it is a small building and it was the middle of August, there was a little wait, which just charged me up really while I was waiting. It was a bit like waiting to go into, I don't know, something amazing like a ride or something. I was just bouncing up and down going, oh, I can't wait to get in, I can't wait to get in. But I didn't wait long, maybe 20 minutes if that. It was so worth the wait. And it did live up to all of my expectations and more. So this is a 2-story, kind of like a little cottage, and it has little sections on both the floors, focusing on different themes of witchcraft and magic, and had little sections of exhibitions on the following themes. There was images of witchcraft, persecution, herbs and healing, The Wise Women's Cottage, Protection, Magic in Wartime, that was really good. Cursing and Counter-Cursing Exhibition, a little cabinet on mandrake roots, a lovely little corner about goddesses with the gorgeous hair lady and the horn god, a little bit on pixies and fairy folk, and then downstairs we got led into divination and the tools of divination, and then also some witches' personal artefacts such as Sybil Leek and Gerald Gardiner and all them types of people. There were little bits of their altars and stuff, which was very exciting. And it ended with witchcraft and magic today in the contemporary world of the 21st century. So it was a lovely little walkthrough. I was there absolutely ages and ages. My hubby took the kids and said, go have fun, we'll see you in about 5 hours or something. No, I think I got there at 2 o'clock and it closed at 5, and I spent the whole 3 and a bit hours just staring at stuff and taking loads of pictures and taking notes and very much relishing in the moment of learning about witchcraft with respect and history and background and folklore, and oh my gosh, it was absolutely wonderful and an absolute bargain to get into. I think it was like a £5 for kids and £7 for adults. So what I'm going to do is attempt to give you a bit of an audio walkthrough using the guidebook, which I purchased direct from them, the mass of photographs I took as I walked around, and also a few internet sources, and hopefully you'll get a bit of a feel as if you're walking around this gorgeous little museum. Let's have a look at the history. The Museum of Witchcraft was the creation of Cecile Williamson, whose interest in witchcraft and magic began in early childhood. Gerald Gardiner, the founder of modern Wicca, was the resident witch when the museum was located on the Isle of Man. The museum moved around a little bit before settling where it is right now. First it began in Stamford-upon-Avon, but that was quite short-lived as people opposed the museum being located there. And then it opened in Castletown on the Isle of Man, which is an area that has much folklore surrounding fairies and witches. It has a tourist season and local news that were congenial to the establishment of the museum. Here, its location was set up in an old mill known locally as the Witch's Mill, in which Cecil purchased in 1948. And at the advice of his wife, he opened an adjacent restaurant known as the Witch's Kitchen. How cool does that sound? Oh my God. The museum was first named the Folklore Centre of Superstition and Witchcraft. And at the time, it was a good moment for a museum of witchcraft and magic to open its doors because it coincided with the repeal of the government's witchcraft laws, which was the Witchcraft and Vergancy Acts in June of 1951. From what I've read, it seemed that Gerald Gardiner assisted Cecil to get the Witchcraft Museum up and running and well established and kitted out, but I get the general feeling and understanding that they had a fallout, and I don't know what it was on. I have read a few bits and bobs that say different things, but I don't really want to get into it here. In all honesty, it does feel a bit gossipy actually. That is not what us witches are about. But whatever happened, Cecil felt he had to move the Witchcraft and Magic Museum somewhere else, and eventually settled on the beautiful Cornish village of Boscastle and opened the Museum of Witchcraft in 1960. When asked why he chose this place, Cecil explained, 3 miles away from this spot you can find the prehistoric maze stone carved into a living rock face. Proof that from ancient times man and his magic making with the world of spirits were active in this area. The centuries have passed and the times have changed, Yet all around us in this quiet corner of England, there is a strange feeling that we are not alone, and that the shades of persons past on and over into the world of spirit are very close. That is why this Museum of Witchcraft is located here. One is standing on the edge of beyond. In 1996, Cecil sold the museum to Graham King. Graham ensured that it would continue to develop into a successful independent museum with a growing international reputation and links to researchers and visitors from around the world. The Museum of Witchcraft became one of the most visited museums in all of Cornwall. It has had a little bit of bad luck in the form of a large flood in August 2004, but because of Graham's quick thinking, he managed to help the residents and the visitors before the flood hit, and also managed to protect most of the museum's artefacts. Yes, some things got destroyed and cabinets got damaged, but most of the things did get saved. In the aftermath of the flood, the museum team conducted a delicate clean-up operation, and the museum reopened with new exhibitions and saw more visitors than ever before. And then on the 31st of October 2013, fantastic date there may I add, Graham King gifted the museum and its contents to Simon Costin, Director of the Museum of British Folklore. Simon has had a long association with the museum and was instrumental in securing many of the vintage cabinets to replace those that was destroyed with the flood. In 2015, Simon renamed the Museum of Witchcraft and Magic, to better reflect the museum's collections and interests within, with new displays, temporary exhibitions and events, and a collection that has grown to over 4,000 objects and over 8,000 books. The museum continues to inspire and intrigue people from all over the world. And that is taken directly out of the official guidebook. So before you even get into the museum, there's this magnificent door that meets you, which I guess is like the staff room behind. And it must be a custom piece because it's this beautiful image. I don't know if it's painted or like burnt onto it, but it's a lady hair gazing at the moon among the trees in the night. And the border is tiny frames of all the things you can find within the exhibitions. It is such a beautiful door, and I just wanted to stand there and look at that, if I'm honest, before I'd even paid in. And then you pay in and you turn right and you go down a little corridor that is mostly focused on the interest of witches' imagery, how witches are portrayed, witches in art. Mother Shipton were in there, which was lovely to see. There were little dolls and like kids' books and stuff. And if I'm all honest, I wasn't that interested in all that, so I didn't spend much time there. And then that led on to the persecution of witches, which thankfully was quite a small bit of the museum. It did have this horrendous chair, cold hard metal chair, which strapped a witch in and I guess they tortured her. So unsurprisingly, I didn't want to spend much time around that either. And then we get on to the good stuff. So there was a cabinet of herbs and healing. This was gorgeous. This was a mirrored cabinet of candle objects, wax candles of hands and breasts to help mothers breastfeed. There was spells to find lost objects and a fantastic big bookcase filled with different herbs in jars and labels on them informing of the herbal contents and what those herbs did holistically. It was really beautiful. There were also a little phallic display of all the cocks you could think of. And that led on to the Wise Woman's Cottage exhibit. This had an audio of a woman talking spells and stuff, which was quite hard to hear because it was quite busy around this point, and I think it went on for quite some time. In this scene of a cottage, there was a woman, and she's known as Joan, and she calls herself a Peller, which is a Cornish name for a cunning person. She would offer you advice on finding love and healing by the moon and what words to say to remove a skin complaint. She was surrounded by animals, and she knows the power of wisdom can come from anywhere. From the words of the Bible to the natural worlds, the elements, the other worlds, within us and also outside of us. This Joan knew a lot, and she would encourage you to look up, for there are other places and other things. This cottage resembles an 18th or 19th century Cornish charmer's home, with its flagstone floor and open fire. There was lots of things in this cottage to help with the practice, such as tarot cards, green glass scrying balls to give you answers to your questions you desire from her. She could help things like problems with cattle if they got sick. She could help with all kinds of things and was a true treasure of that time in history. It gets even weirder though, because apparently this exhibition space about Joan used to be accompanied by Joan's actual skeleton. Now, this, I find it hard to compute. It really blows my mind that this used to have a real human skeleton of Joan White, born in 1775 and died in 1813 in Bodmin Jail, tried as a witch, of course, and found guilty and thrown into jail for it. And she was only buried in 1998. The skeleton of Joan White, known as the Fighting Fairy Woman of Bodmin, was once displayed in the Museum of Witchcraft and Magic. The skeleton, which is believed to be of a female person, was found in Bodmin Jail and was brought to the museum in the 60s. It was initially on public display for over 30 years before being buried by the nearby Minster Woods in 1999. The skeleton's display at the museum was a topic of discussion regarding the ethics of human remains in museums, and it was later moved to a wooden coffin and then to a soft coffin before being buried. The story of Joan White continues to be a part of the museum's exhibits, with a small exhibit on her life and the local folk magical practice, which is the little cottage. I mean, she might have liked being on display for all the witches to be inspired by her story. Maybe it's better than being buried in the ground and forgotten about. Who knows? Just can't get my head around it. I mean, she's no longer there, obviously. And there is a lovely little plaque that says, "No longer abused," which I really liked. Dedicated to it in the museum. Don't you think that's just mad? Must have been quite controversial for quite a long time, and I am glad that she's now laid to rest in a snuggly little warm coffin in peace. Well, so they say. I mean, she's probably not here, and she probably doesn't give a toss. Have you heard about the Whimsy Goth Market in London? A brand spanking new market for the weird and magical, held at Cecile Sharp House in Camden. A space created where individuality is celebrated and small businesses are supported, where all subcultures can come together, feel safe, welcome and included. For more information on this magical event, visit www.thewhimsygothmarket.uk. Then you go upstairs, and this really is, I think, the best bit, because there's a room full of artifacts and curios from history, and it is really varied. There's some artifacts of protection, such as keys, skulls, evil eyes. There were some mummified cats that were found up in chimneys that are thought to protect the household. There was horse skulls, dolls and puppets, both homemade and pre-existing, hagstones, wooden hands and beautiful objects sewn together, puppets made by nurses for like patients, and this really cool magic in wartime display that was all about how stuff got sold to wartime Britain, which was spells and rituals. Hitler pin cushions where you pin his ass. How fantastic is that? So the whole country in wartime were doing a type of magic. Amazing. Sold as a way to boost morale. I think that's just amazing, and I would absolutely be pinning Hitler's ass if I was around at that time. You can get Donald Trump pincushions right now, which is kind of like a voodoo doll effigy. That's good to know. There were examples of spells made by soldiers in the trenches, making good luck charms to send to their loved ones back home. They'd make themselves keepsakes out of the trash they found around the trenches, old clothing and gun cases, making a talisman to keep them safe at war until they got home. There's something quite lovely but dark about realising that people in extreme circumstances of life and death turn to witchcraft to get them through it. It's quite a poignant thought. They were doing witchcraft and magic and not even realising, because it helped them survive and carry on in this dire situation. There was a large selection of curses seen as instruments of natural judgment, kind of like a form of anger management. Anger magic. I've got a book on that. I'm totally going to do an episode on it at some point. The objects included puppets made of wax, fabric and other materials, with personal human things included, such as clothing and toenails and hair. The stuff which we all know gives it power. The puppets once made to be ritually pricked with pins, hanged or destroyed in a fire, and apparently puppets can also be made to bind an individual as a way of preventing them from causing harm to other people. There was a spell to ward off a mouse or mice in the house. This sticks in my mind as at the moment I have mice in my house. There's a mouse house mouse. This curse was a dried mummified mouse in a jar that would be left in the house on display, and the idea was the soul of the dead mouse would hang around the jar and tell its little mousy family to not come in this house because this is what'll happen. But don't worry, I'll stick to the humane mouse traps and setting the little critters free in my local woods because they're well cute. Oh, kids are like, can we keep it for a pet? And I'm like, nope. There was witch bottles full of rusty nails and maybe even urine, although I'm pretty sure I didn't read that anywhere. I guess they don't want to be too graphic because they don't want to gross out the non-witch visitors. And these were used to turn back the curse as a form of shielding magic that would cause the witch who sent it agony and despair. I was looking for the witch ladder, which I covered quite a few episodes ago now. I'm so sure that I read that it was in this museum, and I did mean to ask, and of course I completely forgot in all my excitement, so that's a bummer. And then there were this lovely cabinet known as the Ritual Collection, and in the year 2000 the museum obtained a large collection of occult artifacts, drawings, rituals and tools. The majority of these were once owned by J.H.W. Eldermans. They were passed to the museum by his son-in-law, Bob Ritchell. These sexual images range from fertility charms to items used in sex magic. This cabinet was so gorgeous, and it was full of curios and drawings, all of a sexy nature, but they were really quite beautiful and was Masonic in character, suggesting a network of practitioners and initiates were involved with working with all these lovely tools. I really like this cabinet, honestly. The more you looked, the more you saw, and everything was just so occulty and fascinating and very aesthetically pleasing. There was a little display cabinet of mandrakes, all the roots that is a magical herb which is quite hard to come by these days. Once acquired, the spirit of the mandrake is a sensitive thing that needs careful attention. It should reside in a specially made coffin with offerings of wine and tobacco to help keep it happy. Cecil Williamson wrote that the mandrake was especially powerful in love magic. Plain fact that when properly used, the root does simulate the sex impulse. The witch would consult the mandrake spirit as a whispering oracle to help find lost things. The root is also effective in protecting the user from demonic possession. The mandrake, with its human-like appearance, could also act as a temporary body for a spirit that had been conjured forth. There is a mandrake in that film, isn't there? Is it Pan's Labyrinth? I'm sure the little girl gets given a mandrake to put in a bowl of milk and look after under her mum's bed to keep her well. And I think, doesn't a dad find it, or the general find it and burn it, and the mum dies? The goddess section was really beautiful and very aesthetically pleasing. It had lots of effigies and sculptures of a selection of goddesses, from Mother Nature to Hecate to Breed and Isis. Loads, too many to list. But it had a really gorgeous energy, and there were lots of symbolism of sacred women and shillelagh gigs. It was held up in high regard. You could tell it had a lot of respect. And if I'm honest, I spent most of my time here because it was celebrating womanhood and femininity, the mother maiden crone, the moon, and the goddess worshipping her body. It was lovely, and I took lots and lots of pictures. Right in the middle of the goddess room, there was this lovely hair lady sculpture standing the same height as me as I stood next to her and observed all the little details. The artist, Lionel Muskin, made the sculpture in the 1960s. The work is associated with the actual Playboy bunny girls, with ancient tribal identifications, with certain animals dropping the specifically human aspect of consciousness in exchange for animal instincts. It is a really gorgeous sculpture. Unfortunately, it's got a lot of damage because, as we've established on the previous episode about this, people just can't help but touch, and when you touch, you damage, and that makes me quite sad because it is a beautiful sculpture. It reminds me of the hair women of the Yorkshire Sculpture Park, which I loved as a teenager in art school. Sophie Ryder's lady hairs, they used to really enchant me, and I remember drawing them and being inspired by them. Isn't it interesting that back then I had no idea that I was a witch, but I was really interested in lady hair sculptures. And of course, hairs and witchcraft have a massive crossover, as we all know. There was a small section of the horned god with a big 6-foot standing god with the head of a goat that represented Baphomet, Pan. There was a few little sculptures of the Green Man, a tiny little section on pixies and fairies. What was really cool as well is I mentioned earlier on in the podcast episode about the labyrinth stone, which is why the owner chose this place to put the museum. But I actually realised from looking at the pictures, I've got a picture of this stone. They must have brought it into the museum. And it is accompanied by a little plaque that says, "Run your fingers over the labyrinth and enter the forest at night time, a world of spirits. 3 miles away from this spot at Rocky Valley, you can find this prehistoric maze stone carved into a living rock face. This stone came from farm near Michaelstowe and may have been used for a completion of and communication with the other world." So I don't know if this is the actual stone or a model of the actual stone. That's not very clear. And then from here we go back down the stairs, past some lovely photographs of witches at Stonehenge and various stone circles with a bit of history written there underneath. Go down the stairs and then we come into the little section on divination that has all the tools you can think of to divine: teacups, Ouija boards, pendulums, an actual witch's mirror. It's really strange. I thought I'd taken pictures of this area, but I can't find them, so I must not have. And then that led on to the final bit of the exhibition, which was covering recent witches of the 20th and the 21st century. And these cabinets were full of altar tools straight from the altars of very famous witches from history that you will have heard of, such as Doreen Valente, Janet and Stuart Farrer, Patricia Crowther and Alistair Crawley, Sybil Leek and Gerald Gardiner, and all those famous witches. It was really cool to see some of their actual tools. I mean, wow. And it finished off with a little bit of art that people had sent in, a little bit of information of Satanism and what that entails. I'm quite interested in this as well. When I read stuff, it's not scary. It's not actually about Satan or acting devilishly. They don't believe in the devil, but they use him to represent them. And some zines, which we talked about back with Professor Phil Laggard back a few episodes ago when he was talking about independent zines of the occult scene in Leeds. And then you come out to the shop, which is a tiny little thing, but it's really affordable and full of beautiful pieces made by local witches, t-shirts and guidebooks and jewellery and spells and everything you can think of, posters. And I spent a good chunk of money in there because it was brilliantly priced and the books were fantastic. The Museum of Witchcraft and Magic is known for having a very impressive library as well, which I guess you can book to go in. I didn't see the library. It is off from the museum. I don't know how it works, but I hear and I read the books they've got in there are just so wide, varied and impressive. And at the end of the little shop, there were this lovely little temple area with loads of candles. It looks like a little cave through an opening in the wall. I was asking about it, and it was the rock face that they dug out through the wall and made into a little sacred altar. It was absolutely lovely, and this is where the plaque was for Joan, who was laid to rest recently. With a little bench, you could just sit there and contemplate everything you'd just seen, and I absolutely did that. I suppose it being open to the public, there is a genuine risk of people coming in and not really respecting it and kind of taking the piss a little bit. While I was there were a small group of teenage lads who were kind of laughing and pointing at it. And I did feel a little bit cross about it, but then I just got over it because I was like, I can't alter this. Some people are going to get it. I would say the majority of people are going to get it. Otherwise, why would you even pay in to look at it? Other than interest, respect, curiosity even. Curiosity does, I think, incorporate a little bit of respect, but you wouldn't pay in just to have a laugh, would you? I mean, people probably do. I think if they did, they'd realise quite quickly that this is a serious environment which demands respect, and it wouldn't be so funny. after a few minutes of walking around. Hopefully, it's not very common. And for me personally, it was a beautiful and enlightening experience. And I highly recommend you go, because I've tried to give you a bit of insight as to what I saw and what I found interesting. But I can guarantee I've missed a lot, and probably missed a lot of things that you will want to see and will speak to you personally. It is such a treasure and a wonderful day out for us witches. The Museum of Witchcraft and Magic in Boscastle in Cornwall. Not only has it got a witch museum, but it's also got a pub nearby called the Cobweb Inn. Get spooky and get yourself down there. The last place we visited on this little witchy tour of the southwest coast of England was on the way out, going back home near the end of the holiday, and that was visiting the Chalice well in Glastonbury. We were going up towards Longley, the safari park. So we were going to do the safari park on the last day of the holiday. So I demanded, really, that we go via Glastonbury to see a little bit of the town. And I wanted to visit the Chalice well healing gardens in Glastonbury. We tried to park, actually, in the town. Who knew it was so small? It's tiny, is Glastonbury. Like the main town with all the shops and that, and he were getting really stressed to her husband because he couldn't find anywhere to park up because it was so busy. And I said to myself, well, maybe it's not going to happen today. It feels like it's just too much of an ask. But I remember reading on the website of a sneaky place to park, which we went to investigate, and can you believe there was just one car park space there waiting for us? What are the chances? So I took that as a massive sign from the universe that I had to go and have a look at the Chalice well. And again, my hubby took the kids to go visit Glastonbury and look at the shops and stuff. And I paid myself in to the Chalice well with high expectations again, spiritually and magically. Didn't really know what to expect, and I'd only, I would say, known about the Chalice well the past few years, maybe 3 years. I think I discovered it through some art of the well lid, which made me go, ooh, what's that then? And somebody explained to me that it was a Chalice well, and I was a bit like, wow, that's, I need to go find out what all this is about. So allow me to introduce to you this wonderful, sacred gemstone of peace and tranquility. Beneath the emerald slopes of Glastonbury Tor, where myth and mist entwine, lies a sacred spring, whispered to hold the blood of Christ and the dreams of Avalon. This is the Chalice Well, a place where legend flows as freely as its crimson waters. For over 2,000 years, the water has never ceased to flow, even in a drought, its iron-rich stream staining the stones red like ancient memory made liquid. Some say it marks the spot where Joseph of Arimathea buried the Holy Grail, which is the famous cup from the Last Supper, infusing the earth with divine essence. Others feel the pulse of Arthurian magic as the wells cover 2 interlocking circles pierced by a sword, echoes the geometry of the cosmos and the mystery of Excalibur. Surrounded by tranquil gardens and the scent of Glastonbury thorn, the Chalice Well is more than a spring, it's a threshold, a liminal space where the veil between the worlds thins and seekers of all paths come to drink and ponder in peace. They come for healing and to hear the external whisper of the sacred powers of the waters. This well is steeped in layers of history that stretch back thousands of years long before the legends of the Holy Grail, King Arthur stories ever took root. It has truly ancient origins in the Bronze Age. Archaeological excavations have revealed that flint and pottery shards dating back to the Mesolithic period indicate that the site was revered as a freshwater spring for over 4,000 years. Layers show Iron Age and Roman artifacts, suggesting continuous use and spiritual significance throughout the multiple eras of the beautiful Chalice well. The first written reference to the spring appears in the Great Charlutry of 1210, where it was called the Chalk Well. It was enclosed by a well house to protect it and served as a water source for the Glastonbury Abbey. By 1220, water from the Chalice well was piped into the new extension of the abbey, reinforcing its importance to the monastic community. In more recent history, in 1913, the site was purchased by Alice Buckton, a poet and an educator who transformed it into a spiritual retreat and named it the Chalice Well. She infused the site with sacred drama and inspirational ideas from the arts and crafts movement at the time. But after her death, Wellesley Tudor Pole acquired the site in 1959 and founded the charity the Chalice Well Trust, which still maintains the garden and its spiritual ethos even today. The well is a, chalybeate spring, rich in iron oxide, which gives the water its distinctive red hue. This has inspired legends that the well contains the blood of Christ, brought to Glastonbury by Joseph of Arimathea. That famous and beautiful well cover was designed in 1919 and features the Vesica Pisces in the form of two interlocking circles bisected by a sword, symbolising the union of spirituality and the earthly realms. A living symbol of continuity, healing and mystery. It has power, it has grace, and the whole place is filled with the feeling of tranquil peace, love and healing, and is held as a living sanctuary in which visitors can experience the quiet healing of this sacred place. Doesn't it sound beautiful? It was quite cheap to get in. I think it was just £5 that you paid on the gate, and then you walk up an incline of a hill amongst the trees, kind of like a shrouded path. And then all of a sudden you're in this absolutely stunning, quiet garden where nobody's looking at the mobile phones. People are walking around barefoot, crying with friends, taking moments, lighting candles, sniffing flowers. Oh, it was absolutely idyllic. It was gorgeous. The water holds such power, and it is really interesting because nobody can say for sure where it actually comes from, which is just fascinating. There is a few theories, and here's a little section from the guidebook, which I'm going to read out to you now. Quote, "The well flows out from the ground at the root of Glastonbury Tor at a constant rate of 25,000 gallons per day and holds a constant temperature of 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Its mineral waters have a high iron content, which turns all the waterways and pools in the garden a beautiful deep red. But the source of this water is unknown. The spring may have a primary origin deep within the earth, or it may originate in the Mendips, where there are rich iron deposits. Some propose the theory that the water comes from the mountains of Wales. Others, that the water comes from much more local, from under the Tor itself. In the 1700s, there was a strong interest in the healing properties of mineral waters, and spa towns such as Harrogate and Bath became popular. I know Harrogate sells mineral water to drink in bottles and is quite well known for it. Water is sacred and should be treasured, especially in places like this. But even in terms of magic and witchcraft, you can talk to your water, you can enchant your water, speak kindly to it before you drink it, and it will absolutely help to heal your insides. So while you're listening to this podcast episode, you may as well go and get yourself a nice big drink of water. Get some of that aqua in you, dear witch. All right, yes, what was I saying? Back to my visit to Chalice Gardens. There was a few different areas. There was the psychic garden, the Yule trees, the healing pool and King Arthur's court, the Lion's Head and Holy Thorn, Angel's Seat, a meadow, a wishing tree, and the Wellhead and Sanctuary, which is like the main bit that people see pictures of often, the pretty lid and the well that you can sit round and meditate. The two Yule trees are pretty special and have been dated back between 500 and 700 years old. Both of them are male, and it appears that the smaller one of the two is the offspring or the son of the larger, grown from a spur sent underground by the father tree. How lovely is that? Many consider these trees to be the guardians of the entrance to the inner garden, and the Yule tree is significant in ancient lore. Yules are often found planted in churchyards and sacred sites and are associated with the world tree. I read somewhere as well on the internet that it felt like when you walk between these two trees, magic happens and you can have a glimpse into a hidden realm, which I quite liked. There are many Yules throughout the garden, including the one whose trunk has split in two and then rejoined, creating a natural vesica form. The branches of this tree are often found hanging with ribbons and favours, an ancient tradition which prayers and blessings are asked, offered and taken on the wind to their destination. Yes, the Yule tree has a lot of connections with this gorgeous little place and even a strange story. Apparently, whilst excavating the area, a perfectly round upturned stump was found within the well shaft in the early 1960s, and this Yule stump was dated to be around 2000 years old. Wow! The Lion's Head is the drinking fountain which is piped directly from the source of the well and sits in a sunken garden with formal lawns and trimmed box hedges. Above the Lion's Head stands a holy thorn tree, long associated with the legend of Joseph of Arimathea. I can never say this word. Tradition has it that he was Jesus' great uncle and came to Glastonbury. Back then it was known as the Isle of Avalon, rising out of the sea soon after the crucifixion. He struck his staff in the ground on Wellyall Hill, where it took root and flourished. This species is native to the Middle East and it flowers twice a year at Christmas and at Easter, when the berries formed from the Christmas blossom can also be seen. I just love that this little tree has its own folklore of origin and how it became what it is today. I spent quite a long time with this Lion's Head and I took a few crystals that I cleansed in the waters, and also, my little goddess that I wear every single day, my silver goddess round my neck, I cleansed her in this water as well. They actually sell branded glass bottles at the gift shop. You can drink this little bit of water from the Lion's Head, but only in small quantities because, as we've heard just then, the iron content, which gives the water a beautiful red hue, is high, so it's not ideal for you to be drinking loads of it. But while I were there, I saw people filling up their water bottles and stuff and just having massive drinks of it. I've got my little glass jar of water right next to me here in the official bottle from the gift shop, and I'm taking just a tiny little sip every day. I probably won't drink it all because I'd like to keep some for my Witchcraft, but you bear in mind it is quite old now. It's probably a month since I've been, so it's probably gone past the time of drinking, but it is nice to have it in my possession along with the magical waters from Mother Shipton's cave, the healing pool and King Arthur's court. This is like a little walk-through pool where you're encouraged to take your shoes off and walk through the waters. I must have done it about 3 times. It was busy and it was a very hot day like before, but it was different. The crowd was different. There was people there, but they were my kind of people, and they were respectful and peaceful. There were definitely some witches there, I'm sure of it. Everybody got it and understood it and was still and soaking up the good vibrations of this wonderful place. Yeah, I stayed there until closing time. I lit a candle for my dear mum. Bizarrely, I was walking around with a little tea candle in my bag. I think it had fallen out of my travel altar, and so I took that as a big nod to light the candle and leave it there. I also made an offering at an altar under a tree, and I sat with the actual chalice well for a good half an hour, meditating and just soaking up the beauty and the moment of it all. It was a wonderful day. I didn't want to leave. Don't talk to me about the gift shop. At the end, I spent a small fortune at the gift shop, buying books and almost buying tarot decks, and ending up bringing home this absolutely stunning ceramic chalice that is made by a long-standing artist and sculptor of Chalice Well. It's beautifully decorated with like spirals in the ceramic finish. Oh, and that stands proudly on my altar space. It was a beautiful, surprising little space with lots to offer. Peaceful and tranquil with nourishing and cherished vibes. I'll be thinking about it for a long time to come. And I want to leave you with this little thought. Some see the Chalice Well Gardens as a representation of the divine female energy, with the nearby Glastonbury Tor representing the divine male energy. And this creates the perfect balance of life within the masculine and feminine energies working together to create a local landscape of healing, magic, and peace. Thank you, dear listener, for spending this time with me listening to a Solitary Witch episode of the Bell Witch podcast. I love to spend this time making this content for your magical ears and to encourage you to get witching in the 21st century. If you love what I'm creating, please let me know by leaving ratings and reviews or tagging me on Instagram, even DM me. It is so great to hear from my listeners, and it really does fill my witchy heart with joy. If you've got a podcast you'd like me to share, a magical business I can shout about, or a topic you'd like me to cover, you can reach me via email on thebellwitchpodcast@yahoo.com. I love to hear from you, and I love to support you, as there really is magic in sharing audiences amongst pagan people. Music is by Jeff Harvey of Pixabay. Bell Witch photography is by the lovely Beverly Thornton. And I shall speak to you very soon in another episode of the Bell Witch Podcast. Stay magical, witches.